Hi, I'm Dr. Stephen Wangen, founder and medical director of the IBS Treatment Center, and I'm here today to talk to you about one of my very favorite subjects, food allergies, food intolerances, and food sensitivities. Now, this is a really important issue that I want to help everyone understand, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it, about what it means in the medical system, and how that can be very different from what you might think of it on your own, or what the public often talks and what kind of words they use. Let's start with food allergies. Food allergies are typically diagnosed by an allergist who's focused really on just a handful of symptoms. The most common being the one that a lot of people have heard of, anaphylaxis, which is where the tongue can swell up and prevent you from breathing well. That, of course, is a really significant one. We always want to be on top of that. However, there are lots of other food allergies, and in particular, an allergist is looking at things like asthma, it's looking at things like dermatitis, hives, a rash, or allergic rhinitis, where you get itchy eyes, runny nose, that kind of thing. Other than that, they tend not to think of anything else as being related to an allergy, or certainly as being a food allergy. And they diagnose these typically by either running a blood test, which is an IgE antibody test, that's a type of antibody that the immune system can produce, or they're doing skin prick testing, where they're pricking the skin or putting a patch on the skin with a substance to see if the skin reacts. That's when you hear the word allergy from your doctor or typically in the media, that's what they're talking about, is those few symptoms and that kind of testing, and that's it. Now that's very limiting because we know even in the medical literature and research papers that IgE antibodies can also cause other types of symptoms. There's been publications showing them causing headaches, causing something called esophageal eosinophilic esophagitis. Say that 5 times, which is a type of reaction in the esophagus, and many other things as well. And yet, your allergist is very unlikely to look for those things or to even do testing related to those things. If they happen to even find a positive result, let's say, for example, to dairy, they're probably not going to connect that with your headaches, even if it could be connected to your headaches in the research that's been done. So their scope is limited to those very few things. Also tricky with this is that although those are immune reactions, there are other kinds of immune reactions that can cause reactions to foods. So other types of antibodies that your immune system can produce and other kinds of immune reactions. But let's leave it at that for now. So food allergy, typically only a handful of symptoms and only a certain type of testing. Now let's look at food intolerance. A food intolerance is another big word, but it's used very differently in different contexts. And I'll give you a couple examples. Let's say lactose intolerant. If you're lactose intolerant, your body lacks the enzyme to break down lactose, and lactose is in dairy. So that means you have trouble digesting dairy because you can't break down one of the things, the lactose that's in dairy. And you could take an enzyme to do that, or you could drink lactose-free milk and you're perfectly fine. You tolerate it just fine. There's, however, another use for intolerance, and that would be gluten intolerance, another really commonly used way of using intolerance. Gluten intolerance is not an enzyme deficiency, it's an immune reaction. And in this case, in the case of celiac disease, it's an immune reaction that leads to an autoimmune reaction. So it's completely different than a lactose intolerance, which is an enzyme issue. In the case of gluten intolerance, it's not an enzyme issue at all, it's an immune system issue. And yet we use the word intolerance for both of those. So it can be very confusing because they have nothing in common. The underlying mechanism is completely different. And that, I think, is one of the challenges we have in the medical system, is we're not consistent with these words. So you can already tell that it gets very confusing. Then you get to the word sensitivity. And the word sensitivity is actually a very broad word. It's an umbrella term, and it just covers everything. Meaning you could have an allergy, that could be termed a sensitivity. You could have an intolerance, that could be termed a sensitivity. If you have something you're not really sure what it is it an allergy, is it an intolerance? You might just call it a sensitivity. It's not really a medical word. It doesn't have any true meaning. It just means, wow, I don't feel good when I eat this food. So what I want to make clear to everybody is that there's no good standardization with the use of these words in the medical system. And that's why it's confusing, because everybody's using these words on their own whenever they feel comfortable with them. They're calling whatever their reaction is an allergy, and they might be totally right, even if their doctor disagrees. They might be calling it intolerance. There's nothing wrong with that either. There is no right or wrong with these words yet, and we need to develop standards, because if we don't have standards, then we don't have a way of communicating what's even going on, what even the reaction is. And unfortunately, we don't have those. So that's something I'd like to see the medical system work towards, and that I'm a big advocate for and passionate about, as you can tell, is that I want to see the words food allergy, food intolerance, food sensitivity used consistently across the board, because then we'll be able to talk about them, because these are incredibly important topics that affect millions and millions of people and can impact all aspects of your health. And believe me, I've seen this over and over. I've seen food reactions cause headaches. I've seen food reactions cause joint pains. I've seen them cause digestive problems. I've seen them cause fatigue. I've seen them cause sinusitis. And I see this over and over and over. And I talk about that in some of my other videos. So thank you very much for hanging with me and watching this. And I hope if you are wondering if you've got a reaction to a food and you can't find anybody to help you, come see us. We'd be happy to help you, even if it's not a digestive problem. That's exactly what we love to do. So have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.